Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I am Jamie Moore, founding partner of Moore and Kerbaway Counselors at Law, and I'm your host today. And it's my privilege and honor and all that other gobbledygook to have Stephen Whitteberry with us this morning. Steve and I are professional colleagues in 2 or 3 outstanding business owner groups, and just very pleased that you've taken a few minutes today, Steve, to join us. And I'm just going to be asking you some questions and look forward to your answers. And maybe let's just begin with, I know you've told me over coffee a couple of times, but people are going to be curious about your backstory. Give us a little bit about your backstory.
Well, thank you, Jamie. It's a pleasure to talk with you today, and a good friend and colleague. My backstory, I started my career as a CPA. I worked for 3 years in Chicago for a large international public accounting firm. And in those days, we did acquisition audits. And most of the time, that was one of our clients acquiring another business. Today, they call those quality of earnings. And I cut my teeth on those, doing a lot of travel because I was young and was looking forward to travel. Then I moved out of Chicago to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and worked for BDO, doing many of the same things, quality of earnings, audits, other audits, and then left and went to a large food service distributor here in West Michigan, the largest privately held food service company in the world, and worked my way up through their finance department the last 5 years as CFO. And while I was there, we did 21 acquisitions. And when I left, I decided, hey, I want to take this acquisition and M&A experience that I have and put it to work with smaller businesses, privately held companies that needed transition assistance. That oftentimes means transitioning from generation 1 to generation 2, or perhaps selling the business to the management team or an individual who would like to own the company, or sometimes selling it to a third party. And so that's what my practice is all about. I come alongside the client's CPA and attorney and help them as a team with them, help business owners transition. So today I work with a lot of baby boomers, people in their 60s, late 50s, 60s, sometimes into their 70s, who need to transition their business. And I put all of my former experience to work, working with their current attorney and CPA to make that happen.
Wow, thank you so much. That's awesome. So I guess I would call you a recovering CPA, if you will. You've taken that aspect of your personality and skill set and training and leveraged it professionally, but then to go out on your own like that, just with a goal in mind of helping the business owners we know are in transition, as our motto we've talked about together is transition without regret. Exit planning shouldn't be a dirty word. It's not a dirty little 4-letter word. It's just good business planning. What are you going to do with this company that you've built? I'm especially curious when you talk about the baby boomers. We know that 10,000 people a day are turning 65. And a lot of those, you folks out there own businesses. And the question is, what are you going to do with that rascal? Maybe 50 ways to leave your lover, but there's only 4 things you can do with your business. And that's kind of what Steve helps us do. So I guess I would ask you as a follow-up, Steve, having transitioned as you did from corporate to the private sector, what has that kind of meant to you? Have you found, emotionally and spiritually, as you do that work professionally, what would you say it means to you at this point?
Well, it means a great deal to me. I have really made the transition from corporate America to private ownership myself in a very effective way. It's interesting. I get calls from headhunters frequently, recruiters saying, "Hey, do you want to go back to corporate America? I've got so and so company that needs a CFO." And my answer is always, no way. I love what I'm doing. I'm helping. I have a certain amount of freedom today. I can pick the kind of clients I like to work with. And I just love working with these baby boomers who this is going to be the biggest financial transition of their life. And they need help with that. And my perfect client is the client who says, I've already talked to my attorney. I've talked to my CPA. Now I'm thinking this is the way I want to transition. I want to talk to you and have you work with those other two parties to help in a good transition. That's my perfect client. And that usually is companies with sales of 5 million to 50 million. We do a lot of small manufacturing companies, a manufacturer who might have 10 million in sales, 40 or 50 employees, and they built that business over the last 10 to 20 years. And they need a transition of sorts. And that's what I do is I come alongside their CPA and attorney and help them with that process.
Well, that's wonderful. And I like that approach. Obviously, the more heads we have around the table with that focus, it makes it better for everyone. I know we've talked also about the boomer. We've affectionately call it the silver tsunami. What the latest Wall Street Journal or somebody study, Exit Planning Institute, one of those folks that did a nationwide study was talking about something like 40, 50 trillion dollars or something of wealth is going to change hands in the decade. So as an estate planning and tax lawyer working with a guy like Steve, we know that money's going to move. It's going to move either by default or by design. So we kind of stay awake at night wanting to help it by design and not default. So with that in mind, Steve, what would you say was the biggest issue when someone comes to you and they think they're ready and you have to maybe step back from the canvas and talk about, well, not quite, and here's some things you might want to do or consider. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle I often have to overcome is the value of the business. What is the business worth? And oftentimes an owner will come up with their value of the business based on how much they think they need to retire. Well, that's not a good determination in the market on what your business is worth. You may need $5 million to retire, but your business may only be worth 4 million. And have you had any type of evaluation done to determine what your business is worth? There are appraisers and people who do valuations out there, and they charge $10,000 to do that. What we'll do is we'll come in and do what we call an opinion of value. And we look at a business and say, if we were to put this business on the market and it was to sell in the next 18 months, what would it be worth? And what would a potential buyer pay for that business? And so that is often the first step where we work with them and their attorney and their CPAs to come up with what is the business worth. And that includes, one of the most important factors is the last 3 years of financial results. What has your sales been? What has your net operating income been? And what has your EBITDA been? Earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation. And we can look at that, ask a multiple of questions, several questions that we like to ask, about their management team, about their products and services, about their internal processes. Do they have a diversity of clients? When it looks at their customers, are they dependent on 2 or 3 large customers? We often find in small businesses that they have 3 customers that make up 90% of their sales. Well, if that's the case, what can we do to diversify their customer base before they transition to make their business worth even more? And so we go through that process with them and help them determine what the value of the business is.
So I love that idea because we have different standards for different reasons, and we all maybe think our businesses are worth more than they might actually be worth. Part of that is the methodology we use at the law firm and working with guys like Steve, value acceleration. So I would say one of our common misconceptions as the lawyer in the room is, yeah, we're ready to go here. And they really haven't looked at their internal structure or their operations, or as you say, the customer concentration. There's a lot of things that go into, quote, my business, end quote. And sometimes I bump up against misconceptions that owners have. They heard this, the cashier at Burger King told them blah, blah, blah. The teller at the bank told them yada, yada, yada. And of course, my business is different. We're different than the other people. So when you get to that sensitive place, Steve, where you want to help them, but they're just not quite, the value isn't quite there, or the operations are goofy and they know they're going to stumble along in the due diligence. How do you broach that to get them to just step back and say, it's not a criticism. We're just going to help you think about your business. And maybe you got to go see a guy like me to help do the exit part first and then come back to me. So it's good news, bad news. I always have a little bit of a struggle. How do you handle that?
Well, the best way to handle that is just through a series of conversations and discussions with them. We've developed some questionnaires that they can go through to help them prepare for the transition. Oftentimes, we'll do this opinion of value and they'll say, wow, I need more than that for my business. So we will recommend that they talk with either a business coach, a business consultant, or their CPA or their attorney to improve their weak areas. Probably the best story I have related to that was one that happened several years ago. I sold a business. The guy called me. He was referred to me by his CPA. We sold his business. We got it done, but he wanted a quick sale. He wanted to get out. But he signed, as part of that sale, he signed a 50-mile radius non-compete.
Oh, my.
He moved to a different city about 3 hours away, started the exact same business, and did very well with it. And a few years later, he called me up and he said, Steve, you sold my first business and you did a great job, but I know you always told me I didn't do it right. This time, I would like to do it right. And so we did a preliminary opinion of value. And then for the next 3 years, every year at the end of the year, when he got his financial statement done, we would update our analysis and then sit down in a conference room with the CPA, his attorney, himself, his wife, a couple of kids who worked in the business. And we would sit there and talk for 3 or 4 hours through an agenda to help him get ready to sell that business. And we did that for 3 years. And at the end of the 3 years, he was ready and he sold this second business the way he should have sold the first one. He got far more for it and he was much happier at the end of that second sale of that second business. And so he's one of my best examples of someone who initially didn't do it right, but had a second shot at it, did it right the second time, and was much more pleased with the results the second time around than he was the first time around.
That is an awesome, awesome story, Steve, because we find that as well, that people think of it, it's like a light switch. I'll get near the end, I'll just flip that sucker on and we'll sell it to the kids or we'll go find a buyer. When in reality, the longer you have, the better the result, especially when you work with a team like that. So awesome. What a great story. I like to talk a little bit about when we come together as a team, the so-called transition or exit planning. We like to believe that we have some kind of impact on not just our clients, like from your story, but our community, because we know that even a small business owner, a micro business, let's say 1 million gross receipts and a few employees, if that business goes out of business, statistics tell us that it affects 3 to 6 other people in the community. They're vendors, they're people that help them run the business. So that pebble in the pond is it's not just the owner, it's the other connections. So part of what our message, I've heard Steve talk about this, is what's your impact on the community? If you're Bob of Bob's Widgets and you no longer become Bob of Bob's Widgets, who are you and what are you going to do next? Do you find them struggling with that second half idea of things?
We do. And in fact, we ask them when they think about selling their business to go through and ask themselves some questions. First one is, what's important to you in the ownership transition? And, a lot of people will think, well, getting top dollar. Well, that's not always the motivating factor on transitioning a business. What about family harmony? What about reducing financial risk, having all your eggs in that one basket of the business? What about leaving a legacy? Your reputation in the market, your customers, who are they going to have service their needs once you're gone? Your vendors and your employees. A lot of businesses have employees who've worked for them 10, 15, 20 years. What's important to you regarding those employees? And those kind of questions really come into play when you're looking at a business. Why are you getting out? Are you tired? Do you want a new challenge? We have a lot of people come to us in their 50s that they're not ready to retire, but they're ready for a new challenge. And so we can help them find that new challenge and help them with that transition.
If you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer, right? And so part of our job is to bring up some of these topics that they may not have thought about or not in the way that makes the most impact for them. Boy, that's the big one. What's next for you, George? I mean, well, I'm going to golf. Okay, so 9 holes, 3 times a week. It's about 20 hours. What are you going to do with the other 40 hours that you normally work? So they don't really think it through, that second half stuff.
Absolutely.
And what would you say your biggest challenge is? Ours is just getting people to stop for a moment, just take a breath, and actually think about their company and what they might want to do with it. Just take a breath and just do one thing. Have your opinion of value from Steve. We have a short legacy assessment on our website that takes 15 minutes, or an assessment tool for owners. Just take one step to begin thinking about this. And we always say that beginning the planning doesn't mean that you're ready necessarily to exit, but you got to start somewhere, and the sooner the better. How would you say that challenge hits you when you talk to folks? And if they're not ready, how do you get them to maybe talk to someone like myself or other people to get them started?
Well, I think we have the same challenge you do. The biggest challenge for us is to get them started and to get them thinking about their exit. Most business owners are so busy working, 40, 50, 60 hours a week that they never take the time to get away, turn off their phone, and really start thinking about what's important to them and how they want to leave a legacy of some sort when they do sell. And what we find is just getting them away, and we start with just 2 hours. Give us 2 hours of time where you turn your phone off completely, and we start going through some questions and asking them to actually document those questions, the answers to them, and then take it home and talk about it with your significant other, whether that's your spouse or might be your son or your daughter or whoever, and really talk through that and have some time to think about it. And that is really the biggest challenge we have. That, and then I would say the second biggest challenge is to get them to do an opinion of value, because the opinion of value really tells them what my business is worth right now today as is. And oftentimes after they do that, they'll come up with a list of 4 or 5 things that they really need to improve before their business is worth, 20% more or 50% more. And that becomes their game plan for the next 3 or 4 years. Maybe I have to diversify my customer base. Maybe I have to hire a good general manager who can manage this business. One of the questions I like to ask is, how long can you leave your business without picking up the phone or answering email? How long can you be gone? Is it 1 day? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? And getting them to take that next step of preparing their business. Because the great business is, if you've got a business that can generate sales, generate profits, and you can be gone for 6 months without spending any huge amount of time, you've got a winner to sell then or to transition that, whether that's to your son or daughter, or whether that's to a management team or to a third party. The longer you can be away without having day-to-day activity, the better your business is for a transition.
Yeah, we kind of, as you know, we do some joint workshops for business owners with guys like Steve. And the coach I work with likes to open the salvo with the more irrelevant you are to your own business, the more it's worth. And that wakes everybody up for the second cup of coffee. What do you mean? Without me, it isn't it, blah, blah. Well, let's drill down on that. And I love your analogy, like how far long can you be away without some type of connection? If it's less than an hour, they need help desperately. But as you say, the more the merrier. I guess an interesting question for us would be, what would you say unfairly, perhaps, in working with us as a team, for example, and others, what's the main thing that you've learned through the work that you do in getting business owners just to get started with this process as a good business practice? Not, oh, doggone it, I got to think about getting out of here. It's just a mindset that we struggle with.
Well, I think getting them started is huge. And I think there's a misconception out there that this transition is going to be expensive. That, man, I really don't want to pay the attorney or the CPA or the M&A advisor a lot of money. And it really doesn't take a lot of money. And I would put out there that you're going to save or make 10 times whatever you spend on your CPA, your attorney, or your M&A advisor, because they're going to increase the value of your business or reduce taxes and reduce the nightmares for any type of a transition by investing some dollars up front. And it's easily a 10x return when you start that process.
Well, do the math. So I've heard you say that to people. Just do the math. And part of what we're coached to do with my association with the Exit Planning Institute is to change our language a little bit. I'm not going to spend money to do X. I'm going to invest time, several hours with Steve. I'm going to invest maybe time with me to look at their estate planning. And I'm going to invest E. The E is human energy or emotion. How do you quantify that? It may be a simple process or family dynamics or like your story, but there's going to be some human emotion invested. And yes, there's a fee. But if the outcome is 3x to 10x of that, you didn't spend anything. You just invested it to get the outcome that you want. So I think if we begin to change our language a little bit, we might have a little bit more success with that. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. It is an investment that I think 10x is on the small side. It's amazing how much you can, just multiply the value of your business by investing a few hours and investing some time and energy. And oftentimes, a lot of this time and energy can be done by your staff. It doesn't all have to be done by the owner themselves. Their accountant can help them with quite a bit, or if they've got a production manager or a project manager, a lot of times those people have a big stake in this and can really help improve their business, and that investment just pays off.
Wonderful. So I want to ask you, Steve, if you want to slow down just a moment and tell us, how do we find you? How do we find Steve at Invictus? And then I want to make sure we have a complimentary offer for anyone listening today based on our conversation with Steve. But I want to first ask, how do we find you?
The best way to find me is to send me an email, Steve at Invictus MA. And Invictus is spelled I-N-V as in Victor, I-C-T-U-S, and then M-A for mergersandacquisition.com. That's the best way, or a phone call. My direct line is 616-822-0955. You can go to our website at invictusma.com. There's a little bit about me, my bio, about our team, about how we approach helping business owners in their transition, and would love to talk with you. The first hour is certainly absolutely free. That hour often turns into 2 or 3 hours. and we would just love to connect and to help you make this investment in your business for your transition.
And I guess I would just add an anecdotal comment. It's not free in the sense that they're going to invest some time and energy, and so will you. That's a commitment. We call it a two-way street conversation. Nothing's free anymore. Your time's invested, but the idea is to get some traction with what's important to you. It's worth to me that it's invaluable, the conversations you have with owners and the ones that we do as well, regardless of where it goes from there. And so Steve has agreed to our free, our complimentary offer today. If you take a minute and email him with a question or visit, whatever you want to do, if you would include, if you want to, your snail mail address or your email, we will send you a copy of my book, How to Transition from Your Business Without Regret, to whom you want, when you want, for the money you want. Or we have a report that we just put out called Beating the Boomer Bust. And it's a really fun report full of anecdotal things about howdy doody and all the stuff you grew up with. But it's based on what's really going on with this transition of all of us baby boomers. And so we just get those to you complimentary if you'd like those reports. And of course, you can talk to Steve and follow up from there. But I've so much enjoyed having you on today, Steve. Outstanding comments. I think they're going to be useful to anybody that's blessed to listen to this podcast today. And stay with us. Keep coming back to Legacy Leaders. It's full of good stuff like this all the time. And so thanks for coming. And that's it for today. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.